Today IFRS topic or today's session will be based on fair value measurement, that is IFRS 13, that fair value measurements. IASB basically issued IFRS 13 as a common framework for measuring the fair value when required or permitted by any other IFRS. Now, when we are looking at IFRS 13 is not a standard as in that can be used all by itself like IFRS 3, 10. They technically have something I like business combinations or parent subsidiary relationship that they actually look upon. IFRS 13 is just an incidental IFRS, as you can say, or an IFRS that helps the other IFRSs to reach at fair values of the assets, liabilities, financial instruments, non-financial assets and liabilities, equity instruments, and so on. So basically, this can be said to be an incidental IFRS rather than or an ancillary IFRS that is used in combination with any other IFRS. So IFRS 13 is basically based on fair value measurements. The definition that is given by the IFRS 13 to fair value is the price that would be received to sell an asset or paid to transfer a liability in an orderly transaction between the market participants at the measurement date. So basically, this whole fair value definition comprises or gives the whole IFRS 13 a structure, because IFRS 13 comprises of asset and liabilities. If I just divide the definition that is given by IFRS 13 for the fair value, it comprises the total IFRS standard into that definition. It is considered with asset and liability. There is an orderly transaction, market participants, and the measurement date. So these are the main 4 to 5 things that needs to be kept in mind when I am measuring fair value of any asset or liability or an instrument. So this is the whole crux or gist of my IFRS 13. The main objective of my fair value measurement is I am going to estimate the price at which, whenever a transaction takes place, the price that would be available, that would be provided to an asset or liability in the current market condition. I am going to adjust the price of the asset or a liability in the current market condition, whatever is the current market condition. In that condition, if I need to sell an asset or transfer or settle a liability, what will the price that I will achieve? What is the net price that I'm going to achieve in the current market condition? That gives me the fair value for my asset or a liability. Now, this whole IFRS 13, also on the standard basis, also on the today's session, instead of getting into this small details that are given into our IFRS, we'll be just understanding every concept with the help of examples. Instead of getting into the concepts, we'll be taking up certain examples that will help us to understand that this is what shall be included in my cost, what shall not be included in my cost, and so on. So all the values, measurement, that kind of a thing, that is provided to a particular IFRS. Let's say IFRS 10, 3, or any investment in associates 27, IAS, all of these are the particular IFRSs. Now, in measuring the assets and liabilities pertaining to those in accordance with those IFRS, IFRS 13 helps us to achieve at that price. How we are going to come to that price, as in what is the fair value? How are we going to assist or assess the fair value of my asset and liabilities? We're going to achieve that method with IFRS 13. Now, there is one principle that IFRS 13 fair value says, that fair value is the exit price and not the entry price. Now, what is the exit price and entry price? Entry price is what you have actually purchased. Now, I am just putting it in a simpler way. Entry price and exit price are the two terms that are used for the simplification. Entry price is basically what I have purchased it for. Exit price is what am I going to sell it for. That is the very simple layman definition for my exit and entry price. So fair value measurement, that is IFRS 13, takes into account the exit price and not the entry price. Exit price in the actually takes into account the exit price in the principal market. We are going to see what is a principal market and everything, but I've just provided you with the gist of exit price and entry price. So I am going to look at the price of the asset or a liability not from my point of view, because from my point of view that would have been an entry price. What did I purchase it for? I am going to see or assess the value of the asset on the market participants' point of view. Market participants' point of view means from the view of the purchaser. If I am going to sell my asset, so from the view of the purchaser, the person who is going to buy the asset, and all this is valued. It is not at the time of selling or something. It is just a kind of a hypothetical situations that are there. And in hypothetical situation, what if today I need to sell this asset or transfer a liability, settle a liability, what will be the amount that I will achieve? That is the fair value, and that is in the definition only. It is very much based on the exit price. What is the price that market participant or the purchaser, the buyer, is going to provide it to me? And now, since we are talking about the exit price method, of course, this whole fair value measurement is based on the market based measurement, not the entity specific. Entity can suppose the asset to be at $1 lakh or $2 lakh, but from the market specific point of view, from the let's say the market based measurement, it can be only of $50,000. So this fair value is of market based measurement rather than being an entity specific measurement. Now, when I am when I'm assessing the IFRS 13 fair value measurements, it provides me to determine 4 aspects. There are basically 4 aspects. Management of any entity will have to determine, will have to judge for when I am providing for a fair value concept. First is of course, the asset and liability. The asset or the liability in talks. I mean, what are we discussing? What is the asset or liability for which we are taking out a fair value price? Then there are non-financial assets and non-financial assets, of course. The third important aspect that we'll be looking at is the market. That is, in which market am I judging, in which market am I going to sell or purchase that asset? Of course, every asset, financial or a non-financial asset, has a market developed already. Mostly there are developed markets in which you sell it. You cannot just go out and sell a particular, let's say I need to sell a land or a building. There is a market developed in which I'm going to locate the buyers and everything, and make a transaction of my asset. When I'm talking about shares, derivatives, I will be talking about the securities market. So I cannot sell the equity instruments or derivatives, debt instruments, etc. in my normal market. There's a securities market that has been developed for that. So I will have to determine the market. Of course, the market will provide me with the price that is going on at the current situation, the current scenario. What is the price we are looking at? And then, of course, it provides us with the valuation techniques, the approaches that we'll be using to value any of the asset or liability? Which approach are we going to follow when I am going to adjudge for, when I'm going to determine the price or fair value price for an asset or a liability? Now let's start with asset and liability. Of course, everything that I have in the past to overview and judge, that is determination, that I've asked you, there are various technical concepts that have been provided under IFRS 13, and that really includes the theoretical part of much, and that is the reason I've just put down the main points, and for the easy understanding I have just provided you with an overview and a synopsis of what is actually in talks, what is reading between the lines, as we can say. That is what I've actually helped you with, because IFRS 13 is mostly concerned with the whole theoretical part, the types of assets, their values and everything. So it is more reading between the lines and grasping as per our knowledge, as per our thinking and everything. So we'll be talking about the assets and liability. When a fair value, look, a fair value measurement actually relates to any particular asset or a liability, and therefore every assets and liabilities special characteristics needs to be incorporated in the whole scenario of fair value measurement, because every asset or a liability has a particular characteristic, and that characteristics gives that asset or a liability the value that it has. Look, if I'm talking, let's take a very simple example of buildings. A 4 floor building or a 3 floor building, at every place will be priced differently. So that is the reason is because of the characteristics that are attached to that building at every place. Some may have various if let's talk, if I'm talking about a setup build, I mean a business building, a business setup building, if I'm talking about, it can have various characteristics, the way it is constructed, the way it is it has got so much amenities and everything. So these are all the characteristics, the ease of easement of lines and water lines, electric lines, easement of network, and so many things are there that provides a characteristic to the building, and that is the reason it is priced differently at every place. And similar is a characteristic of any particular liability if you're talking about. So every asset and liability, when we are valuing, is valuing, the first point is we need to keep in mind is the characteristic of that asset or liability, because that characteristic of that asset or a liability is going to increase or decrease the price. The location, the location of any asset, where it is located, and what is the easement, and all of these things are the characteristics that provide any asset or a liability with the amount or the fair price, fair value. So asset and liability are the fair value might be either on the following. One is of course the standalone single asset or a liability, and then a group of an asset or a group of liabilities, or a group of assets and liabilities, like a cash generating operating unit of a business is a group of assets and liabilities both. So one is of course a standalone and the other is a group. Let's say if I'm talking about a group, I can talk about invoice generating software, let's say invoice generating software or an accounting software that it has. So it may include, if I am software that is inbuilt at a place or something like that. So if a group of us, I am talking about that whole invoice generating kind of a software, in that manner it can have 2 to 3 machines, software. There are so many values that are attached to it in terms of a single asset or a single liability. There, it can be purchased on loan or something. So liability is also attached to it. So group of asset or a liability or a standalone asset or liability, they should be measured at the fair value, and the unit of account is one of the most important concept that will be used. Unit of account is basically defines what is being measured for the financial reporting purpose. What is being a liability is aggregated or disaggregated for the purpose of applying IFRS 3 as standards also. Usually what happens is IFRS 13 only gives unit of accounts to those assets and liabilities that are not present in any other IFRS standard. If I am talking about IFRS 3, 10, or let's talk about IFRS 3. So unit of account will be provided to me by IFRS 3. Like unit of account can be shares, one share, to thousands of shares. It can be different levels of unit of accounts that it can have. Similarly, in buildings, if I'm talking building or land, if I'm talking uh, the unit of account as in what is the aggregation used, square meters or feet or whatever the aggregation, the unit of account that is used. If I'm talking about a cash generating unit, a total business cash generating unit business, so unit of account can be all different. It will totally depend on the assets and liabilities that we are talking about. Unit of account is the let's say it can be a measurement unit. For an easy understanding, a measurement unit, the way you measure it, and mostly it will be provided to you by the IFRS standard that you are looking into, and not IFRS 13 do not actually provide you with the unit of account. The IFRS standard on which you are using IFRS 13. IFRS 13, as I've told you, is ancillary. It becomes a part of the main standard. So whatever is the main standard, it will provide you with the unit of account. Like if we, this is a kind of example that will help us to as I've told you, we'll be looking upon the example. So this is an example which will help you to understand an asset, liability, the value measurement, unit of account, and everything. Like there is an entity that actually holds an equity instrument uh, for which sale is legally or contractually restricted for a specified period. Now there is an condition that has been laid down. Sale is contractually and legally restricted for a period of time, let's say for the next 5 years, or you can use the term as blocking period. The restriction is a characteristic of the instrument and therefore would be transferred to the market participants. So if I am talking of, if I'm thinking of selling that equity instrument in today's market condition, a purchaser or a buyer will of course look into that restriction and increase or decrease the price depending on the restriction that has been laid. So this restriction has been put as a characteristic of the equity instrument. That is the reason characteristic of my asset or liability is very important, because those characteristics takes the form of costs that can increase or decrease the price of my asset. Hence, in this matter, fair value of the equity instrument will be equal to whatever is the quoted price of any identical unrestricted instrument. I'll assume that this is the unrestricted instrument. Any identical unrestricted instrument price is, let's say, 100, and the unrestricted equity instruments. Hello, hello. Is my voice audible?
Yes, it's audible.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I thought there was a network issue in between. Uh, I actually am done with this asset and liability, but I suppose that there was an network issue that had come. So I'll just go through it again. Uh, yes, the entity is holding an equity instrument. It is a financial asset, and which is there is a blocking period into it. Blocking period is basically when you cannot sell the asset or the instrument to any other party within a specified period. Let's say 4 years or 3 years or 5 years. It can be any time period. And now this restriction has actually become a characteristic to the instrument that has been it has been attached. This restriction can be categorized into a cost by a market participant, which can increase or decrease the price of the equity instrument in the current market situation. So the current fair value of my equity instrument will actually be whatever is the quoted price for an identical. Let's say there was an equity instrument that is exactly in terms of contract is identical to this one, and it the only thing is it does not has any blocking period. It can be sold freely whenever whenever the entity wants. So I'm going to take that price and increase or decrease the cost that will be associated, that will be attached to by a market participant. Market participant here is the purchaser or the buyer that will be associated with that particular restriction that is laid down, and it will increase and decrease the fair value of my equity instrument. So this is how any characteristic will increase or decrease the fair value. Though, as I've told you in the starting, we are all discussing this in a hypothetical situation. No one is actually selling the asset or a liability. It is just that you need to value it fairly. So market rates or the market participant involvement is important, so that you get a fair measurement of what is the actual market rate. The quoted price, if can simplify it, is actually the market rate of that asset or liability. I've just simplified it. There's nowhere this thing is given in my IFRS. It is just for the easement of your understanding. You can say the quoted price is whatever is the market rate that is going on for that particular asset, and identical and similar have been used particularly in this IFRS. So identical is identical in every aspect. Every aspect, the terms, the conditions, if there is a tangible asset, the look, the use and everything is identical. Similar is it is almost the same. One of you there was a land that was actually contributed to a neighborhood NGO in an otherwise developed residential area. The area is a developed residential area, contributed or donated to the NGO. NGO is currently using that land as a playground. Also, when it was donated, the donor has specifically laid down a condition that this land shall be everything, and only condition that has been laid down is the it should be used by the NGO. There is no restriction that is laid down by the donor that you cannot, the NGO cannot sell the land, or it cannot be used for any other for a residential property purpose or something like that. There is no restriction laid down on this. The only specification provided by the donor is it should be used by the NGO only. Now the donor's restriction on the use of the land, because it has asked the NGO to use it for whatever they are using it currently. Now currently they are using it as a playground. So of course it cannot be transferred to the purchaser. If I am going to sell that land in today's scenario, I will not transfer this specific restriction to the purchaser. The reason being it is specific to the association, that is, it is specific to the NGO only. Once it is sold, the the entity holding the land changes. So this, of course, in no sense this would be transferred. The second characteristic, which is very important, is the easement. Easement is if a land or a place is can be laid down with electricity lines, the power, the water supply, and everything is easy there. So of course it becomes a characteristic of a land. In normal terms, if the land is subject to easement, the price will automatically increase, because after I have purchased that land, it is easy for me to lay down the electricity lines, to provide the water supply pipes and everything, whatever it is there. So if a land is subject to this, it becomes a characteristics, and it can be classified as a good piece or good deal of land, let's say. And of course, now since it is an characteristic of the land, that will be transferred. That would be transferred. Now it is a characteristic of land. So my fair value is going to be appropriated as whatever is the higher, fair value as a playground, or a fair value as a residential development. Fair value as a playground, if I'm using a land as a playground and developing it as a playground, the market rate for that playground will be different. If I'm going to develop it into a residential building or a residential affair, then the value will be different based on the government every taxes and everything, all of that. So the fair value will be different depending on this. So whatever is higher, my fair value if I'm using it as a residential development, or my fair value if I'm making it as a playground, whichever is higher, and increase or decrease will be made. That is, the value will be increased or decreased depending on the effect of easement. Let's say the fair value as a playground is only $1 lakh, but fair value if I develop it into a residential development, if I'm going to sell it in that way, the fair value increases to $5 lakh. So the NGO is going to value it at $5 lakh along with the easement effect of easement. Let's say the cost or effect of easement cost that has been attributed to it is $50,000. There's an increase. So it is going to NGO is going to value the land at $5,50,000. The reason being, you will have to take the higher of the two. Though they are using, irrespective of what are they actually using it, they may use it for nothing also. They can even use it for farming. It doesn't really matters. But whatever is the actual higher rate, that shall be used. irrespective of the use by the NGO. Whatever is the NGO using it for is not important. What it can be best used for is important. And effect this cost of easement and everything can increase or decrease the fair value depending on what is the cost of easement the market participant puts. Now this is something that depends on the market participant. Market participant is your purchaser or buyer can increase or decrease the value depending on this characteristic. That depends on your purchaser. What value does it attaches to this particular characteristic of the land. Now there are certain points that needs to be remembered when I am assessing the fair value for assets and liabilities. This I have informed you that unit of account is of course determined by the applicable IFRS, whichever IFRS for which is applicable, and for which reason we are using this IFRS 13 standard that provides you with the unit of account. It IFRS 13 says that whenever is entity holding a position in a single asset, let's say the asset is divided into 100 units and the units that the entity holds is only 20. So the entity shall only value for 20 units depending on the price into quantity. The measurement will be into in the way of price into quantity. Let's say the 100 units are valued at $1,000. So for 20 units, whatever the price comes, you're going to value only that part of the valuation you are considerate. You should be considerate with. The other is not your part. Then, if a fair value measurement, as I've informed you, assumes it is a hype. Everything that if today a sale is happening or something, it is totally dependent. It is totally a hypothetical situation. So it is just an assumption if this thing needs to be sold today in the current market situation at current market rates, irrespective, it may increase in the future. But if in today's situation, this is the value that can be attached to the asset or liability, that is the fair value measurement concept of IFRS 13. Now there is something known as portfolio exceptions that fair value IFRS 13 has. If a reporting entity is managing a group of financial asset or a financial liability, that means the company or the entity has a portfolio with offsetting risk on the basis of its net exposure to market or credit risk that has, which is a usual form of portfolio analysis in normal entities. The group, this credit risk actually allows the group based on the price that would be received to sell in a net long position or paid to transfer in a net short position. So I am holding that group of asset, the portfolio, in the manner in which the net long position or the net short position transfer price is taken into account. What is the for the people who are not able to understand the financial concept, portfolio is basically if I am having 10 types of shares in my, I'm going to make a portfolio out of 10 shares of different companies, different entities, different industries, and so on. So I put it into a portfolio, and the portfolio, every share is of course subject to different kind of a risk and everything, and net long and net short position is assessed in the portfolio. Now in some of the companies actually believe that the portfolio exception that is there in IFRS 13 specifies that the unit of measurement for any financial instrument which is within the portfolio, means any share or any asset that is within the portfolio, that is the net exposure of the identified group to a particular risk and not the individual instrument within the group represent the new unit of eight volatile shares to normal shares. These are the kinds of portfolios that they have. So IFRS 13, when is assessing the value of my portfolio, it takes into account the whole portfolio units and the risks that are attached, and it measures the value the particular financial asset that is within the portfolio, and the risk that is only that instrument is attracted to. So this is something that is having the entities who manages the group of financial assets and liabilities. They are a bit worried about this thing. It can also, the entity may be able to include the premiums and discounts in the fair value measurement of the portfolio that are actually consistent with that unit of account, but not the individual instrument that make up the portfolio. It can happen in this fashion. That is the reason IFRS 13 has included if any particular financial asset is financial asset or a financial liability in my portfolio has that premium or discount that is asset. So premium and discount will be excluded from my fair value measurement of that particular portfolio, irrespective of the units that are included, the amount of units of that particular financial asset that are in portfolio. All of that will be excluded, and only the value of my instruments, as in the unit of account, will be that particular portfolio, not the individual units that I have into it. I can have 10 shares of a particular entity or a company, and only one share for the other companies, and or it depends on the number of shares and number of financial instrument units that you have in the portfolio. So the portfolio exception is that none of the premium discount that you have in a unit of instrument that you have, it should not be included into that, and only the portfolio is measured as a single unit, not 10 units within a portfolio. So this is a portfolio exception that has been used in IFRS 13. Now, when we are coming to non-financial asset fair value measurement is actually as per IFRS 13 is nothing new as we are being using in the past. I mean, most of the entities that are being using in the past, it is nothing different. So there is no changes that the entity will have to inculcate in its financial statements as per the non-financial asset measurement of the fair value. IFRS 13 actually says that whatever is the non-financial asset highest and best use, the fair value shall be measured in that purpose only. So highest and best use is whichever is higher method that we use in our non-financial assets, the same will be used in my IFRS 13 measurement, which is going on by most of the entities. So it is not very new concept that has been induced or introduced by coined by IFRS 13. Non-financial assets will be actually using the cost approach, which we are using the replacement cost approach, and the higher and the best use of the market as per the market participants. This is the thing. As per the market participant perspective, that should be valued as per that only. The thing that has been that is there in IFRS 13 is whatever is the highest and best use. If there is some other use of my non-financial asset, then it should take into relevance that it should be physically possible, it shall be legally permissible, and financially feasible. physically possible in the sense the physical characteristic of the asset that market participants would take into account, as in what are the physical characteristics of this asset that can be that can add or decrease the value of that asset. Then it should be legally permissible to take the and that should be taken into account when I am assigning a different use for that particular asset. It though it is I can use it in that way, but does the law allows me to use the non-financial asset for that purpose? And financially feasible, of course, the income and cash flows that are actually generated, they shall be the economic benefit, rather, if I say the economic benefit that it is that it is accruing, it should be less than whatever the cost it is that I'm providing for the asset. It should be financially feasible. The use it shouldn't happen that the next use that the market participant assigns to that particular asset, it really doesn't happen. Should not happen, rather, that it is not financially feasible. The economic benefit is not as per that. Now, of course, a non-financial asset also has certain points that needs to be remembered. Here it says that the highest and best use, it shall depend from the market participants perspective. Market participant to what they can make use of that asset that is important, and not what the entity is using it for. Again, the similar to that financial asset and liabilities. And entity, of course, if there is no suggestions that come up, if there is no different kind of use that can be suggested for a financial asset, entity can presume that this, whatever I am using this financial asset for, this is the best and the highest use as per the market that can be made of that financial asset, and hence they can value it as per what they think. This is something that has been assigned to the non-financial assets. And this is, of course, the financial feasibility. Then non-financial asset, if we understand it with the help of an example, there was an entity that acquired a land in business combination. Land is currently being used as a factory and is situated at in an industrial use. The current use of land is presumed to be its highest and best use. It is that no other use can be made for that particular land, though nearby sites have been recently developed as residential sites, that is for the purpose of residential buildings and high-rise apartment buildings. Now, on the basis of that development and recent zoning, so recent zoning means that it is not under a green zone or something that restricts construction on that land for residential purposes, and other changes that have been developed facilitate that development, and entity determines that the land currently used as a site for factory could be developed as a site for residential use. At the time of acquisition, it was being used as a factory. But now, after the acquisition, when they are valuing it to be assessed in their financial statements, they look into the highest and best use is the zonings and all the development facilities that have been provided, that have been renewed in that area or something. Now the land can be used as a high residential development, which can of course be more profitable than its use as a factory. So if I am going to, again, a hypothetical situation, if today I sell that land, any purchaser or buyer will of course see to it as a factory, but along with that can see the potential to develop the site for a residential use when I am pricing the land. Hence, this attached to this becomes a characteristic of a land, and I am going to value the entity is going to value the land as per the highest of the value of the land which is currently in use as a building, or value of the land as a vacant site for the purpose of construction. And I'm going to take into consideration the cost of demolishing the factory and other costs, because of course when I am using it as a residential building, I will have to demolish the factory. So that cost will also be taken into account by the market participant. So whichever the value of the land is the highest, with the industrial use as a factory set up into that value, or the price of the land for the purpose of construction. Now, construction can only be done on a vacant land. I cannot turn out a factory into a residential purpose and build floors over that. So I will have to demolish the factory, and cost is going to be accrued for that demolition. That shall be reduced in the land, in the cost of my, the price of the land, and I'm going to value it as per whatever as the highest of the two. So this is how the non-financial assets are priced at fair value depending on my IFRS 3 standards. Now it comes the market. Once I have decided what is my asset, what is my liability, what are the costs that will be attached and that will be deducted, that the characteristics, location depending on the asset and liability. The next is I am going to find the potential market for that. So that will be known as the principal or the most advantageous market. Now the potential market says, as I had already in the starting informed you, that every asset or a liability sold in a particular market, there is a particular market that is developed in which any asset or liability is sold. So that is going to provide me with a price that I can assign to my asset or liability. Principal market is the place where I get the price for the fair price for my asset or liability. Now the price in the principal market is where the asset is actively being purchased and sold. That is actually a principal market. If my principal market is not present, if there is no particular principal market, as in the today's market, there is no principal market that is present where I can say that this is the market where I can find a potential buyer and sell the asset or liability. So the next is, if that is not, the next is the most advantageous market. Any market in which I am going to get the highest price, or where can I find the active buyers for that particular asset, can be said to be a advantageous market. Let's say a land or building, there is a land or building market, as in where I can find the potential buyers for that. Securities, the debt instrument, equity instrument, securities market is a principal market for them. But if I do not find a principal market for my particular asset or liability, the second is, of course, I'm going to find a most advantageous market. The most advantageous market is the one where if I'm going to sell an asset, it will maximize the amount, the maximum amount that I can get for my asset. And if I'm going to transfer the liability, the minimum amount that at which I'm going to transfer the liability. That is how I'm going to classify as a market as the most advantageous market if I do not have a principal market into my for my asset or liability. Now there is one thing, management will not be required to perform an exhaustive search. You do not have to exclusively search for a market or identify a principal market. Management, of course, cannot ignore the evidence that is reasonably available when considering which market has the greatest volume and level of activity for that asset or liability. But no exhaustive search needs to be done for that. By the rational behavior of the purchaser and seller and the rational ways of selling and buying, if the management can perceive the principal market, and if principal market is not available, the most advantageous market. Now there is one more thing it can happen, that as I've told you, debt instrument, equity instrument, securities market is the principal market. But if I'm not a listed company, then I'm not eligible to enter into that market to sell my equity and debt instruments. So the market shall be accessible also. There are certain sales and purchases that are restricted to a particular type of industry or a particular type of like any industry. If I talk on general terms, irrelevant to the current terms, defense market or railways is a market where a normal company cannot transact into, because they are either government transacted markets. So that is an example of where companies are not eligible to enter into a market. So, and eligibility of that market is also important. The asset can be priced at different values, or the liability can be transferred at different value in that particular market. But if you are not eligible to enter into that market, then those prices and those transfer amounts cannot be taken into account. Market participants are basically, that I have informed you, are the buyers and sellers, but that also they shall be independent. No related party transactions can be done. Like two subsidiaries of a parent cannot transact between them relating to a asset and liability, and can say that this is a fair value of the asset, because that is a related party transaction. So independent, that is for the independent, you can take as arm's length price that we say. Reasonable understanding of asset and liability means that whenever my buyer or seller, both the parties have understanding of what asset they are selling and purchasing. Because if reasonable understanding is not there, the characteristics that are assigned to my asset or liability will not be judged fair, and cost will not be laid down properly for the price valuation. And they're able to transact. Able to transact is they should be able to transact between the two parties. The buyer and the seller should be able to transact. Like a bankrupt company cannot enter into a transaction. That kind of a thing is provided here. And motivated but not forced means that the market participation or the purchase and sale shall not be forced. They should not be induced into the purchasing or buying of the asset. They shall be motivated. These are the points that needs to be kept in mind even when I am having a hypothetical situation for the purpose of valuing my asset or liability. The reason being, if the market participant is not independent, is a related party, and is not able to transact to something, the value that I'll be giving, that I'll be providing for my asset and liability will not be fair. So all these things need to be kept in mind. You cannot value any asset or liability keeping in mind that I assumed it that if I transacted with any subsidiary of my own company, the price that I'm going to achieve for that asset is equal to this amount. You cannot do that, because that is a related party transaction. Similar is the case with the other market participant things also. Now comes the price. Price is basically one of the most important thing, because the whole fair value measurement is related to the price of which, the amount for which the amount and the asset and liability will be transacted for. Price assumes that a transaction is an orderly transaction. Orderly transaction means the market is principal or the most advantageous, and the market participant is able, motivated, independent, and has reasonable understanding. That is what is orderly transaction means. And the price should be the exit price, not the entry price, not what the company purchased, the entity purchased it for, but what it is going to sell it for. If there is any case, if today I need to sell my asset, what is the price? It should be then exit price. Now, if location is the characteristic, location is one of the very important characteristic that has been specifically provided by IFRS 13 that is assigned to an asset or a liability. The reason being, let's say if I purchase or acquire a company of US today, my inventories and my godowns, everything, warehouses are situated at US. Then I will have to incur cost for the purpose of bringing that inventory to India, to my own home country, whatever it can be, China, India, whatever is the home country. I will have to incur cost to bring that inventory at my home country. If we are talking about inventories at business acquisitions or something. So location is a very important characteristic that has been kept into mind while IFRS 13 measurements takes place. So transportation cost and transaction cost are usually the two costs that are incurred when a transaction happens. Transportation cost is made more is actually being focused more here. The reason being, it is attached to a characteristic of the asset that was present while it was there even before the business combination or anything happened. But transaction cost occurs only when the transaction happens. Transportation cost will be there because it is in a it is attached to the location of the asset. Transaction cost is incurred when a transaction happens. It can be incurred, it cannot be incurred also. Like here. Now, since we have studied about the, we have gone through the market, the price and participants and everything, and the asset, liability, everything. This is an example that will help us to understand the price, the market and everything. There was an asset that was sold in two different active markets. Now, these are active markets and it can be sold in any of the market, and but the price that is available, the price and the cost that will be available, that will be incurred at different markets are different. Now an entity is entering in both into transaction both the markets for the asset at the measurement date. Now this is the cost and price at the measurement date. In market A, my price received is 260, transaction cost is 30, transport cost is 20, and the net amount that I'll be receiving is 210. In market B, the price that is attached, that market participant have priced it at 250 fair value, transaction cost 10, transport cost 20, and net amount received is 230. Now let's say my principal market, I am including 2-3 scenarios out here. My principal market is market A. In this asset, since transportation cost is given, location is a characteristic that is important. In market A is my principal market. If I sell it in my principal market, so my price for that particular asset will be priced at 230 minus 20, that is the transportation cost and not the transaction cost, because when location is the criteria, when a location is a characteristic to the asset or a liability, transportation cost needs to be taken into account and not the transaction cost. So the price that will be taken is 260 minus 20, that is 240 will be the amount for that asset, the fair value for that asset. The reason being, when location is the criteria, transaction cost is not looked upon, transportation cost is judged. And if market B is my principal market, so my price will be 250 minus 20. That is, the transportation cost is same in both the markets. Now, when I will have to judge as in which market, what is the price should I assign it to? When I am assigning a price to it, it is the highest and best use. I am assuming it is best use in both the markets. Now the price is, it should be highest. I am going to sell it in market B. If I have the choice and market A and B both are equally advantageous, equally as a principal market, so I will be selling it in market B. The reason being it has the highest, it is providing me with the highest value, and the best use is of course both in the same in both the markets. So this is how price, market participants and everything interrelates and unfolds when a fair value measurement is done. Now coming to liabilities and equities, this is a small part of the IFRS 13 only. Liabilities and equities, the IFRS 13 basically deals with assets, liabilities, non-financial assets, liabilities, all of these. So it says that whatever liability or entities own equity instruments. Just a moment. Sorry. So this says you are valuing the liabilities or the when fair value is to it, fair value measurement actually assumes that financial or non-financial liability or an entity's own equity instrument, like equity instruments that are actually paid as a consideration for the purpose of business combination, is transferred to a market participant at the measurement date, and the transfer of a liability of an entity or an entity's equity instrument assumes that the liability would remain outstanding. This is an assumption that is made for the liability and the entity's own equity instruments. A liability would actually would remain outstanding, and the market participant transferee would be required to fulfill the obligation. This is a kind of assumption that is taken by IFRS 13. And when I'm talking about the entity's own equity instrument, entity's own equity instrument would remain outstanding, and the market participant would take on the rights and responsibilities that is associated with the instrument, and the instrument would not be cancelled and otherwise extinguished on the measurement date. So this is the assumption that needs to be, that is taken by IFRS 13 for the purpose of valuing the liabilities and the entity's own equity instruments, and they shall be fairly valued under the IFRS, whichever is the IFRS. It can be IFRS 3, 10, IAS 27, whichever is the IFRS or the IAS in according to which we are valuing the liability and equity instruments. While making that calculation, while reaching out to that calculation, the assumption that I'm going to make is for the liability and for the equities, for the entity's own equity instrument. Now, once we have reached the asset, liability, financial instrument, equities, and everything, the next is we are going to see the valuation techniques that are provided, or the approaches that are provided by IFRS 13. There are basically three types of approaches or techniques that are provided by IFRS 13: market, cost, and income. These are the three approaches. And most of the entities are valuing and using the same approaches and techniques for valuing their financial and non-financial assets and liabilities. So there is not much changes in the valuation or the pricing and settlement that needs to be done for IFRS 13, because they are already in existence. Most of the entities are working, and they've hired these valuation techniques. Talking about the market approach, this is a technique that uses the prices and other relevant information that is generated by the market transaction involving an identical or comparable asset or a liability, or a group of asset or liability. So when any identical asset or liability is being transacted for, the amount or the price that is attached to that particular asset or liability, market approach uses the same price to value the asset or liability. Market approach actually, for example, the valuation techniques that are consistent with the market approach often use the market multiples derived from a set of comparables. Multiples might be in ranges with a different multiple of each comparable. Like matrix pricing. Matrix pricing is usually a market approach based pricing that is used to calculate the prices of the debt, securities, and financial instruments that are floated. Matrix pricing is actually a mathematical method of approaching to the valuation of the financial instruments and debt securities. So market approach uses that kind of methods to value the debt securities, instruments, or whatever the assets are in talks are. So matrix pricing, the financials people, CAs, CFAs who are there, the matrix pricing methods, they are actually the market approach. Coming to cost approach. Cost approach reflects the amount that would be required currently to replace the service capacity of an asset. Replacement costs, that if financial people must be are using the replacement cost, the current replacement cost phenomena, that is actually the cost approach. Valuation techniques that refers to the amount that would be actually required if currently I purchase or replace the service capacity of an asset. Like any asset of same capacity with same technicalities, originalities, whatever it is, if I go out and buy, if I construct that a similar kind of asset, what will be the cost that I'm going to incur? That is the valuation technique known as cost approach. Income approach is, of course, the cash flow approach. The discounted cash flows, NPVs, future cash flows, rate of returns, and everything. These are the terms for the income approach. Cash flows, any future cash flow, the asset is going to provide me certain, I have estimated future cash flows. The present value of that cash flow will be the price of that asset of under the income approach. These are the three different valuation techniques that are used, and that they are actually provided under IFRS 13. These are the examples for valuation techniques. Like market is matrix pricing, the mathematical method of matrix pricing. Then cost approach uses the current replacement cost less the obsolescence, of course, less the obsolescence in for non-tech, for the technical people and everything. The depreciation that you have, almost similar, not the depreciation less, but depreciation which we provide for, that is the obsolescence cost for the asset or liability, that is for the asset. So depreciation, you can take it for the consideration for the time being. The depreciation that we account for, it is almost the similar. Then the income approach is the royalty free, royalty relief from royalty, option pricing, the present value approaches, and there are so many more to it. Meme is basically, most of the people might be knowing multi-period excess earnings. The financial people must be knowing that meme is the multi-period excess earnings. Under meme, what do you do is you just derive the future cash flow from any asset. You just derive all the cash flows that the asset will be accruing in the future. You subtract the tax expense, and the result that you get is meme. That is the multi-period excess earning method. This is the meme method. That is a very effective in use method for the income approach. You compute the tax amortization benefit into it, present value of future cash flows, contributory asset charges are allocated, and there are so many things under the meme method that you do. But just for the understanding, you just derive the future cash flows and subtract the tax expenses from that. You achieve to the almost the present value, then certain more adjustments that needs to be done under the multi-period excess earning method should be done. So this is the meme approach. The other approaches are royalties, option pricing, present values. All of these are the income approach. You estimate the income asset is going to provide to you in the future. This is what is income approach. Cost approaches actually estimates the cost, the amount that I will get at the if I purchase a similar identical asset or construct a similar identical asset. Market approach actually uses the comparison, as in what is the price for an identical model, quoted prices in the market. That is what you use in valuation techniques. I mean market approaches and cost and income. Now, this is an example that will help you to understand the market approach. Yes. Like O is an oil manufacturing company. It holds a small number of oil-related derivatives for speculation purposes. Valuation technique that should be used for this derivatives, that is for the oil-related derivative, we need to find out which valuation technique will be used. The information that is provided to us is that crude oil prices are determined worldwide by the supply demand chain. Significant influence that plays is this OPEC. The price of the crude is also affected by the energy and oil future markets. Oil and gasoline commodity futures are traded through futures markets energy contracts. Derivatives that are held by O are identical and comparable to the derivatives that are traded in the energy and oil future markets. So these oil manufacturing companies, oil-related derivatives shall be valued using the market approach, because I have a derivative, I have an identical asset that I can assign to it, identical and a comparable asset that is assigned to it, and I can use the quoted price for that derivative and use it for my fair value measurement. So I'm going to use the market approach. These are the this is an example for a market approach valuation technique when is used. Now the another is this option where there was a company M that acquired company N. N has actually 3 machines that were working in line of production of a product that was sold by N. Machines were purchased from an outside vendor by N. the current use of machine is considered to be their highest and best use. Now I've got the highest and best use. I have that 3 machines, they work in line, that is, they work simultaneously to produce that particular product that is actually sold by N. Now, if I want to value the machine, that is, I need to assess the fair value for my machine, the current replacement cost, I am going to use whatever is the current replacement cost. Any cost that if today I'm going to purchase similar kind of machine, I'm going to construct similar kind of machine, or something. If I'm going to construct it, if I'm going to make similar kinds of machine, what is the cost that I'm going to incur in the current scenario at current market condition? And that shall be adjusted to the obsolescence. Obsolescence as in physical deterioration, technological obsolescence, or economical obsolescence, and any kind of obsolescence that has occurred, I'm going to adjust it into my current replacement cost, and I'm going to achieve the fair value of the machine. So I'm going to use the cost approach here, because cost approach uses the current replacement cost adjusted with obsolescence. Usually the non-financial assets, most of the time it happens that they uses the cost approach. Cost approach is used by the non-financial assets. Most of the times it happens that the cost approach is used by non-financial assets. Now, an example of income approach. M acquired N, and N was not a listed company before the acquisition. Before M acquired N, it was not a listed company, but now M wants to list the equities on the market for the company N. After the acquisition, M is of the opinion that the N equity shares shall be listed in the securities market. So of course there will be a change in the valuation, and the valuation approach will change. The reason being, before it was not listed, so the unlisted equities would have been judged at income approach. Whatever the income approach, the future income approaches that would be unlisted equities, they were measured at income approach. The company N was used income approach for that. But now, when it is listed, when N has gained access to the securities market, the fair value that will be used for the equities, it will now be the market approach. That is the quoted price of the identical assets in the securities market, the debt instrument, and everything, whatever will be the price in the listed market, that will be assigned to the equities. And the effect of change will be done in accordance with IAS 8. Now, as I have informed you that IFRS 13 is an ancillary, it is an incidental standard. So disclosures and everything, all the policies, disclosure only in connection to the valuation techniques, the markets, and the pricing will have to be done as per IFRS 13. Rest all disclosures will be applied for a particular IFRS for which that IFRS, we are using the IFRS 13 for 10, 3, 9, 15, any IFRS for which we are using the IFRS 13 approaches. Only the disclosure requirements required in IFRS 13 are for the valuation techniques, the markets, and the fair value achieving price. Otherwise, it is all the IFRS pertaining to particular IFRS standards disclosures that we have to do. So here, the IAS changes in the accounting policy disclosure will have to be laid down. Now, once we are done with valuation techniques, here comes is the fair value hierarchy. To increase the consistency and comparability in fair value measurements and any related disclosures, IFRS 13 has actually laid down or has established a fair value hierarchy that will categorize inputs into three levels. That is inputs to valuation techniques that will be used to fair value. Inputs, if I will help you with inputs are basically the prices, the basis for your valuation, on what amounts you're going to value. How will you get down to the amounts? That is actually inputs. Inputs is the start. Let's say if I am starting a valuation, what will be my starting point? How am I going to get the prices? How am I going to get the costs and everything? So those are the inputs. Inputs will be provided. They shall be processed as per my valuation techniques, and the output will be the exit price. That is the fair value of the asset liability. So here, fair value hierarchy provides you with inputs. Now, the inputs are divided under three types of inputs. That is level 1, level 2, and level 3. Where level 1 are the very basic observable inputs, and level 3 are unobservable inputs, which cannot be observed usually. Let's say from normal to illusion, when you go, that is the level 1 to level 3. Normal is which is very easily available is level 1, and in level 3 you will have to put lot of judgment, lot of imagination to get those inputs. Those are unobservable, as you can see. Fair value hierarchy is actually focusing in prioritizing the inputs used in valuation techniques and not the techniques themselves. They do not provide you how to value the asset or liability. They rather just provide you with the inputs. You can use the valuation techniques whichever fits in, and you can reach the fair value measurement. Fair value hierarchy actually gives the highest priority to the quoted price in active markets for identical assets and liabilities, and the lowest priority to the unobservable inputs. As I've told you, from normal to imagination, one which is very readily available in the market is the level 1 inputs, so that are given priority. Whichever of course is available readily shall be prioritized, and in which you have to put in lot of efforts to assess it and everything, those are actually under level 3. So level 1, level 2, and level 3 inputs will be level 2 inputs are basically all those inputs. One is quoted price, like identical assets. The quoted price of the identical assets are level 1 input. If I have any identical asset, what it is quoted in, that is my level 1 input. All the other inputs for that particular asset or a liability, other than the quoted price, as in the location, the characteristics, and all those inputs, costs that shall be deducted, that shall be adjusted, and everything are level 2 inputs, because that is a secondary input that will be available, because location will be of course be assessed when I'm going to enter into a transaction. When I'm supposing to enter into a transaction, location will come into existence in terms of that particular asset and liability. And level 3 are unobservable inputs. These are actually, they cannot be observed in usual nature. They will have to be used and assessed in terms of quite imagination will need to be done, like credit risk, performance risks, and everything. They will be assessed, and this can also happen. Kind of inputs are basically level 3 inputs that will be used. So all these inputs will be provided. Valuation techniques shall be used on these inputs, and a fair value of my asset or a liability will be achieved. So this was all from IFRS 13. In my IFRS 13 standard, as I've told you, it is an ancillary and incidental standard, so it does not has a specific only IFRS 13 application accordance kind of a thing. It is just incidental to the other standards. Whenever any other standard happens, fair value measurement comes into being, and initial recognition, subsequent measurement, fair value or fair values needs to be done. So this was it from my side on IFRS 13. And it was a incidental standard, so not much is provided under IFRS 13 for all the things. Only these points that needs to be kept in mind in the techniques. Of course, the techniques are usually the same that are being used and that are in existence for the purpose of calculations and valuation in terms of my regular operations. So thank you. This was it from my side. Any questions and anything shall be forwarded to support@bispsolutions.com. And any questions if here can of course be provided under the chat box.